Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, August 13th, 2025 informal meeting of the Board of Public Education for Savannah-Chatham County. I'm very delighted to see people physically here today. And those of you that are watching, you're invited to come to any of our informal or our regular meetings, and we encourage you to do that. This is an information-only meeting. We do not take any votes during this meeting. And let's go. All right. The first thing is our board member comment. Get this done right. Okay. I don't think we have any. Yes. Go ahead.
Nothing big. I'm just thankful for this time to talk at the beginning of the informal meeting. And I just want to say thank you to all of the folks in the community who've kind of reached out and expressed concerns or praise about their experience going into the new year. It's really, really helpful because we just won't know. We don't know if someone doesn't say that there's an issue. And so I've really benefited from that. And I think our district leadership has benefited from feeling that people feel comfortable communicating. So I appreciate that. And I say keep it coming. You know, everybody knows our cell phones, at least my cell phone is on the internet. So keep reaching out and letting us know what you think.
Yes, Ms. Salt.
Along that same vein, I've had wonderful reports from people who say they have gotten help from staff when they have called in, that they've been tremendously helped, and usually that's not something we get to hear. So thank you, staff, for all you've done to help get the kids back in there with all the little ups and downs that come up.
All right, we will start with our report on opening day.
Awesome.
Dr.
I'm
Watts.
excited to kick off, and you all gave a great lead in to our report on the opening week of school. The opening week of school was very exciting. Of course, there are always glitches and ups and downs, but we were able to navigate all of them. I think before I turn over to Mr. Hediger, I'd just like to thank our families, our students, and our staff, and that is every staff from our custodians to our cafeteria workers, our teachers, our school leaders, our central office staff. It is a true sentiment of together we can. It takes all of us to have a great opening of school, and I think we demonstrated that in such a strong way last week. So super excited that we are fully engaged in the school year, day 7 or 8 now, and things are falling into routine and normalizing. But we are excited to take a recap of week 1. And so with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hediger.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, Mr. Board President, board officers, and members of the board. Great to be here today to share with you some information about our first day ready, the very first day of school, Monday, August the 4th. I will say that in itself was something new. As we all know, we had modified the academic school year calendar, and we started this year on a Monday. And of course, that will get us out of school before Memorial Day this year for everyone watching. But a great school opening. We had over 35,000 students show up on day 1. First day ready across all of our schools on that Monday, August the 4th. You'll see as we're tracking right now enrollment numbers, this is a very interesting time of the school year. It is that first 10 days of the school year where you see a lot of movement. Families still coming in, getting settled. We saw some changes, as you can see, with some student enrollment in the various groupings of schools when you compared the first day to the 5th day. Of course, this is a most accurate and up-to-date data looking back at the first week of school. So that's why you see that comparison of first day to 5th day. But we continue that tracking. I will say that student no-shows is something that we're looking at very closely because that has some impact if students haven't been in school for a certain number of days since the very first day of the actual day of start of the school year, they are subject to potential withdrawal of the school district. So we want to be very careful on that, and I know our school leaders are watching that closely and reaching out to families to get clarification on where they are in that school year. So we continue to roll through. And speaking of students showing up, we did a lot of work this summer, and we moved our approach to engaging with our families to having in-person registration events and also providing those core services for our families to be assisted with, whether it is information on transportation or information on school meals or other components that will come with the registration process. You'll see in the in-person events we held, there were two of them, one at Southwest Middle and one at the Family and Student Services Center, who has now moved back to 400 East Broad Street. They're very happy to be back into that newly renovated facility there. Of course, they are partners there and neighbors to Formy in that same building, and we saw a lot of foot traffic coming in there with families that needed assistance. 437 total new registrations there, but that goes without saying that in that campaign of registration, the online component was also mentioned. And we reminded our families, you can register online. Go to our website, and it'll walk you through the process. We had 3,621 registrations submitted from May 22nd through before the first day of school. And then we continued actually with them into the school year. As you can see, 636 submitted leading up to just yesterday. So that continues to be a focus area for us. We also wanted to highlight some quick hits on big things that were new this year. Of course, you'll hear more in this presentation when our operations team talks about the school nutrition program, but free meals this year. We did a lot of work to share that narrative and get that information out, so we're very excited to be providing that for our families this year. The board fully aware of revisions to the policy as were approved by the Board of Education through the process on student dress code. Spirit wear tops. This is very clear in our policy and the work that we've done in communicating to families and the information we have on our website that those school-specific spirit wear components are allowable as an approved wearable for school uniforms. That was very important this school year and continues to be narratives that we remind our schools and our families. Attendance. Miss school, miss out. That remains our focus area as we continue to focus on attendance, ensuring that students are present, available, and getting high-quality learning experiences in our schools. The policy we went through with our board and was approved prior to the start of the school year is in full force. Something that we have had and been stressing with our school leadership, and also we've had on our school website to communicate to families, but this is going to take some additional reinforcement. As the school year is starting to settle down, we've got one full week in and families get into their rhythms. We'll be reminding them of the new nuances of attendance. The no credit risk is a really important component that we will be sharing with our families. Our outreach team is working closely with parent engagement facilitators to get accurate information to them so they can be speaking directly to families and reminding them of the nuances of the new policies and attendance. Also, we're very excited about a new communication tool. We'll talk a little bit later in the presentation. It's called Let's Talk, and this is a way for us to expand on our engagement with our families and really position us into more of a customer service and responsive agency through our digital platforms on our website. So we'll be sharing a little more about that. And of course, we've been very busy. We've been on tour with some ceremonies and celebrating the growth of our school district and the fabulous new facilities and the millions of dollars invested into high-quality learning spaces. 3 major facilities to highlight: Windsor Forest High School, Bloomingdale Elementary, and of course the Early Learning Center at Formy have all opened and been getting some amazing positive responses to those facilities from our families and our staff. And speaking of facilities, of course, that's a major component of our school operations team, but a lot to be talked about here, from transportation to maintenance and school nutrition program. I'll now turn over the microphone to Ms. Megan Davidson to share more from this area.
All right, so good morning. We had a great first week in operations. We had over 19,000 students that were routed by our transportation team. We did experience some typical congestion and parent traffic, some The weather was a Savannah opportunity as we had rain, but remember last year we had a hurricane, so we'll take rain any day. On the first day, we had 651 calls received in our transportation area, and you'll see that those numbers dwindled. By the third day, we were down to 300 calls. We gave out the all clear by 6:35 on the first day, which is a success. However, remember that those bus drivers start getting there well before 4 in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning. We are up and working, so that makes for a long day, but that was successful. Our CAT passes were given out to our choice and our charter students, so we had 89 that were issued prior to August 4th, but by August 8th, through the help of our friends in communications sending out messaging, we had over 236 issued. In maintenance and operations, we did have some sporadic HVAC issues across the district, Islands High School, the cafeteria, and in the media center. Hess, K-8, Rice Creek had some issues. At May Howard, unfortunately, we had to delay opening school because we had a tree come down and knock out our power. But through the work of our maintenance hard work team and our Georgia Power, we were able to get those babies to start on the first day, just a little bit delayed. We had a moisture issue that was mitigated at Charles Ellis. And then for the first week, we had over 1,000 work orders that were processed by our maintenance team. 421 of those were newly called in. Moving on to our school nutrition team, we saw a 25% increase on the first day year over year over the students that are eating in our dining spaces. We're very excited for those babies getting food the first day. And just a reminder that we are now cashless in our cafeterias, so all adult meals, a la carte items, and additional food purchases can be made through the My School Bucks. We served over 27,000 meals for breakfast and lunch on Monday, so we're very excited. And now I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Butler.
All right, great morning. As we prepare for the first day of school, our schools and our district staff really work diligently to ensure that our schools, swing sites, and our programs were ready to welcome our students back to school. This included the successful transition of our Georgetown K-8 to the swing site at Largo, Tibet, Jacob G. Smith to the Montgomery Street swing site, as well as Schumann's students being relocated to Formy, A.B. Williams, and Juliet Lowe. Mr. Hediger had already indicated that our Student Family Services Center returned to 400 East Broad Street. I do want to acknowledge the collaboration and work of our cross departments and schools in serving our students and families in July. Particular area of pride was the support of our English learner families. During our pre-registration event, a significant number of those families that we served were EL families. As you may know, we have nearly 41 languages spoken in our district, and our bilingual liaisons, our interpreter services were really essential to helping our families and students navigate the registration process this year. So I want to acknowledge the work of our teams to make the first days of school a smooth one. We'll also want to acknowledge and celebrate the work that has occurred during those first few days. Many of our staff visited schools to assist during the first few days with critical registration and enrollment to make sure that that was as smooth as possible as well. So I want to really acknowledge the Together We Can spirit that occurred within the first few days. Beyond that, I want to highlight the support that has been provided to our students and families in our autism services. We serve nearly 400 students. Our principals, our teachers, and our district staff work closely with those parents and those families prior to the start of the year, but also during the first few days, and continue to provide that support to make sure that that transition was smooth. Services were continuing to be provided, and that we had a positive start for every single child in those classes. Lastly, in addition, we opened 2 new pre-K classrooms, one at Godley Station and at New Hampstead K-8. Our pre-K team is continuing to work the wait list, as you can see, contacting families to fill those open seats, especially in classes where students have not yet arrived. I do want to note that many of the schools with wait lists are located on the west side of town, and those seats are at capacity. But we are working very closely with those families to offer them available seats at schools across the district. But overall, we had a great start and prioritized those supports here at the beginning of the year.
Good morning. From the Office of Talent and Human Capital, I just want to give some highlights. We are still actively filling positions. That's what we've been doing. And so just to give an update, we are at 200. I think we have 203 on ethics transposed. Sorry about that. But total of 230 new teachers for the start of the school year. 47 of them are first-year teachers. We have many teachers that have come back to the district, over 35 that have returned, as far as they had resigned at some point in the past and have returned. The same numbers equivalent for about classified staff. And you can see the number of classified staff, existing classified staff that have taken on the responsibility. They realized that they could be a teacher, and they've gone through the process of being a teacher. That's the 30 that you see that have transitioned to be certified teachers at this time. We still have a lot of hiring needs. As always, bus drivers, custodians, paraprofessionals are a need, because as we continue to have our paraprofessionals transition to certified, it creates a void on the paraprofessional side, and that continues, as you can see there. We will be, we're still trying to fill positions, all positions. You can tell that as well. I wanted to highlight, we have the state ended their EAP program on June 30th. We've always had an EAP program internally to have support our staff, but we have an expanded, and the board approved an expanded vendor, where we now have another vendor that is also 100% virtual, and there's ability to use the app, a phone on the app, to be able to get to that vendor as well. So we're excited about the additional ability to offer EAP services to all of our employees. We are on track as it relates to substitutes. Our substitute fill rates are good in all of our areas. I think we still want to be improving our SMP areas as it relates to subs, but all of our other areas are doing good as far as our substitute fill rates. And that concludes, I think.
Good morning. Talk a little bit about first day ready for school safety. Largely, our first day was a success. I thought it was exceptional, probably one of the best on record yet. This required a lot of coordination as we look at over 426 square miles, 7 municipalities, over 36,000 students returning. All of our roads and highways are filled with people bringing their kids to school. We started this year out with AAA, Schools Open, Drive Carefully campaign. I want to give a big shout out to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety for leading the charge in awareness of driving in and around schools safely. All of our law enforcement partners that stepped in, we could not do this without them. All of our parents, all of our new motorists that were on the road for having some extra patience and helping us make this work. All of our staff who did a tremendous job to make sure that we were first day ready. Again, it's a big undertaking. Some of the highlights of that that I think really helped us out in our layer security, our weapon detector scanners were at all schools. They were deployed at all schools. And we were able to screen at 100% of all students and visitors that were coming into our schools. As expected, traffic congestion was there, but we did a really good job at trying to mitigate a lot of that. Some of the focus areas were the New Hampstead K-8 areas, of course, Jenkins, and the Jacob G. Swing site had some traffic issues, Johnson's and Windsor Forest. But as time progressed, we began to experience improvements. Once those driving behaviors, even today, there's a little congestion, but it has gotten 100% better. And we expect to get even better as time progresses. We had some really great initiatives that took place. Our walking school bus initiatives, which teaches kids to walk to school safely. Typically, there's an adult that goes with them, but it operates just like a regular school bus. There are pickup and drop-off points to help our kids walk safely to school and back from school going home. So we were really excited about that. Gaston, J.G. Smith, and Pulaski was added this year. Our crossing guards remain a critical need. We still have openings, so I'm making a big plea if you know someone that would like to join what I call our ambassadors. They are many times the first faces you see of the Board of Education, and we need them. They're out there in the middle of those roads, getting our kids across those roads safely. So we're in need, and a critical need, for additional crossing guards. I'm really excited about something we've been waiting for a number of years, and that's our mobile command vehicle. That mobile command vehicle was built for us. It's one of the first, I think, that among what I call the Big Ten of Board of Education Police Departments, the largest district in Georgia. But we have one that was built just for school safety and security. This vehicle has all the modern technology. It enables us to do coordination, monitoring, to plug right into our schools to be able to see cameras, all of our technology and security systems that exist in schools. We can see that real time, and we can do the coordination with when there's a crisis or an emergency and first responders are coming. We're able to deploy this vehicle and do the kind of coordination to help make sure that our kids are safe. And so I'm really excited about that. Overall, just a great overall back to school initiative, and I think everything went as expected. I couldn't expect any more. Some refer to it as organized chaos, but we've learned to do a pretty good job at it. So a big thank you and to the board for all you do to support us in that initiative. Your messaging out to your constituents really made a difference for that as well. So thank you very much.
So lots of work going on as we embarked on this new school year, and behind that, of course, is the great work of our communications staff. Public affairs team on the communications side and our engagement and outreach team as well has been very busy. Much of the initiatives that you heard about from other divisions today, the communications and outreach team are right there with them to provide that voice and to amplify the things that we're doing across our great public school system, so all of our families are informed, engaged, and ready to have a successful start. We used a whole host of communication channels. Our website obviously is our key communication platform. We had a very robust back-to-school hub there where you could find everything from school uniforms to school supply lists, and of course your back-to-school bell times as well are all there in one-stop shop. Extensive media coverage. Appreciate all of the great support of our division heads and leadership and their teams as we brought them all together in a one-stop shop roundabout to meet with the media before school. And we saw some great coverage from the outcomes of that from the first 2 weeks of school to lead up to August the 4th. So that in tandem with other communication channels that we use, such as external medias, our social media campaigns, video productions. We've been very busy getting the word out about the new school year and some of the things that parents really need to be paying attention to. And of course, our outreach team, led by our Executive Director of Engagement and Outreach, Ms. Tamika Tribble, has been very busy as well. I do want to highlight this year, one of the first new things that we did with that team was to create a community resource expo. We held it at the Savannah High School on a Saturday, and it was in partnership with Parent University. Nice turnout of families there. Saw some families at that event that typically hadn't seen before at Parent University events. So I think we found a great way to leverage an existing partnership in the engagement with our families and provide resources for them. That was new this year. And of course, the other thing that's happening with our outreach teams, they're very active in staff training. Ms. Tribble has been in front of our secretaries of every school, for example, in some of their back-to-school training and talking things to them about customer service and welcoming school environments, and how we can really have a positive impact on how we engage with our families to improve the learning environment and the services we offer. With that, I do want to highlight something new this year that we launched on our website. Extensive work from our communications team. Kudos really to our Executive Director of Communications, Ms. Jennings, who was instrumental in getting this launched. And the whole public affairs team really coming together and working with a new tool called Let's Talk. Let's Talk may seem like a simple little thing when you log on our website, but it does so much, and it's really driven to provide a customer service responsive engagement with anyone from the community, our families, even our students and our staff. And what this does is it also provides real-time data for administration to go in on the back end and see what are families asking us, what are the community members saying, and how can we use that data to improve our services. To give you an example of this, just newly launched with the start of the school year, we saw some 400 users in the first start of the school year. And one of the components that we saw, the question we saw the most, as would be expected, was about transportation routes and families wanting to know. But the unique component was most of those questions were translated. They were translated into Spanish. So that's a good data point for us to talk about how we're engaging with our families where English is not the first language, and how do they know that important information about school bus routes. So we're very excited as we continue to grow this tool and encourage our community to use it, our families to use it. It is AI generated right off the top, so simple questions that you get recurring that you can find on our website. This bot component will scan that website and will find that answer very quickly. Anything from when's the first day of school to what's for school lunch. And it will be responsive to that. Now, when it gets very technical, the bot will say, I need to know more about what you're asking about and how can I help you. This is where extensive back-end work has gone into on the administrative side to triage those questions, because then an email is generated and it goes to the appropriate division and an appropriate staff member who then has real-time communication with the user who put the question in. Now, users can also bypass the bot part of it when they open it up and go directly to the email. The email will ask various questions. Are you a parent? Are you a staff member? Are you a community member? And is there a general area of your query? And it will funnel that to the appropriate staff member. And what administration can do on the back end as well is go in and look at the response rates on how we're replying to these inquiries that we're getting, and look for trends through our analysis. So this is newly launched. We just started it with the start of the school year. I'm very proud of the work that's gone into this, which really is a cross-functional departmental ownership. It is not just communications, because every department that has a footprint on the website has ownership of the responsiveness to this new tool. And we're very proud of the work that our team members have put in to support us in launching this new tool and how we can continue to leverage it through the remainder of the school year. So that concludes our school opening report. August 4th was a very successful day by all accounts. Subject to any comments by our board members or questions, that completes our school opening report.
Okay, Dr. Hoskins-Brown, Dr. Hall,
Um,
good. Dr. Bringman, Dr. Howard Hall. I'm going to start with you next time, Dr. Howard Hall. All right.
Thank you, team. Thanks, everyone, for this report. I'm really happy to hear about the work with the bots. I'm a very late adopter of using bots. I'm usually the person who closes the bot on a website, and I've started using them. Like, these are actually, some of these are really good. Some of them are actually very helpful. So I'm glad we have a tool like that for our families. I did have the opportunity to see Ms. Tribble in action on day one, and I'm really happy to see the impact of the training that she's providing, and I think she may have ideas about how to magnify that, since there's only one Ms. Tribble, really magnifying how that can happen in the district using our online resources. So I'll be happy to hear more about that. What this report sounds a lot like to me is the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. What I haven't heard is, what was our biggest challenge in opening up, and how did we overcome it?
Thank you for that question, and I appreciate the invitation to speak around some of the challenges, because they exist as well. And it is an important part of how we evaluate and after-action review our work so that we can continue to get better. I would say weather was probably one of the main challenges, obviously out of our control. But the weather-related issues impacted not only things like traffic, but it exposed some of our facility deficits. So leaks in roofs and things like that became more apparent to us as the torrential rains came down. We also discovered from our many on-site physical walkthroughs, there were facility concerns that, for whatever reason, had not been addressed. And so we really had to pull together very quickly to address some of those issues, and you'll hear from our maintenance team and our operations chief around some of those things. And you'll actually see a funding request for some of those things, as we discovered things like flooring that needed to be replaced, carpets that needed to be cleaned, just things for whatever reason that had been ignored and not dealt with in the past. We needed to deal with those things, HVAC issues and things of that nature. I would say those are probably the two biggest challenges. Of course, every family that had a challenge, whether it was a transportation concern or a registration concern, all of those are big issues with those individual families, but we didn't find a lot of trends and patterns in those regards.
My main question is about our landscape. Some of the schools look, pristine, manicured, but there are several that need a lot of work. And I know that we contract with Tidewater and Manker, and I'm thinking that perhaps we need to expand their contracts so that it's not just a matter of cutting grass, but actually when the shrubs need pruning, all those kinds of things that make a difference between, a place looking great and looking kind of drab. So I guess, Ms. Davidson, if you could respond to that.
Yes, good morning. So I do agree that there is an opportunity to review our contract with our ground vendors and to allow for more than just the maintenance, but enhancement, and to change the expectation to not just cut the grass, but let's make sure that we are doing the aesthetic pieces as well to make it feel the nice, friendly atmosphere that it should.
Greetings. Thank you first and foremost for this wonderful presentation. I would like to say thank you to every employee that's employed by Savannah-Chatham County Public School Systems for putting their boots on the ground as we push into this first few days of school. I would like to also say to the community, thank you as we look at slide 4 and we look at all of the wonderful schools that we've been able to cut ribbons on. Thank you for voting for East Plas. As well as I want to say thank you to CAT for making sure that our students were able to get to school when in need. With that being said, I would like to ask a couple of questions. One question was referred to on slide 3. Do we have any schools that have reached capacity? Mm-hmm. We have. So when let me ask this question: do we have any schools that have exceeded capacity? So what is the game plan for leveling those numbers out?
All right, so I'll start, and then Dr. Barnes can jump in with the current operations. We do have some schools that have exceeded our capacity. Remember that we can take a school up to 110%, mm-hmm. and anything above that is where we start to jump in. We are working with our friends in procurement to procure the demographer, which will help guide us on what do we need to think holistically from a data perspective for additions, modifications, or changes. And that will allow us to make sure that as we move forward with the additions, like the addition at Rice Creek, that we are properly accounting for the accurate size so that we are spending good money once.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. So in terms of, excuse me, so in terms of operationalizing this in the school, being that the students are currently there, we have to try to maximize the facility as much as possible. So where we are seeing an increased number of students is at our Groves High School site. At Groves, what we're actually doing is we're using some classrooms from the Mercer side, roughly 5 classrooms on the Mercer side, plus an additional room that was dedicated for pre-K to accommodate some of the high school students. And in terms of our K-8, where we saw some real pain points of Pulaski, we have put some teachers on cart around, particularly elective teachers, where they can go from classroom to classroom, and we're utilizing some of the stage areas for theater and things of that nature. So we're making different usage of the space that's within the building to try to offset some of the overcrowding for the identified classroom spaces.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. I have one more question. As it refers, thank you, Chief, for your report. I was moved with safety as we looked at the tragedy that took place on the base on last week. I wanted to ask, when we talk about safety on campuses, I know that we have detectors that would prevent weapons from coming onto the campus, but is there a practice or a rule of thumb for weapons coming even onto the campus at all?
Well, first of all, we don't want any weapons or contraband coming on any campus. If it does, then we're going to try to mitigate as much as we can. We have layers of security. There are people that come on campus. Let's say that you're riding in your vehicle, you may have a weapon. You have a right to have that weapon. But there's also, you have to keep that weapon if you got the car locked in a locked area in the car. And so there's a lot of activity and rights that people have as they come on and onto our campuses. We clearly do not allow those inside of our schools. Although they may come on our property, we do a lot to help mitigate that as much as we can. But I feel real good about where we are on not allowing it to get into our schools.
Dr. Brinkman.
I would also like to offer a lot of thanks that everyone has already offered, and I will probably repeat some of them. To all our teachers and staff, thank you to the district staff that we have been sending emails to. You know, we get the emails, we cannot make the changes, but we forward them as quickly as possible, and I've been getting responses so quickly from all different departments across the district, so thank you for that. To our bus drivers, thank you for waking up at dark 30 and staying till the sun is going down. Thank you for getting our babies to school safely. Thank you for turning on, hopefully all the time, your app or however that's tracked so that our parents can follow where their babies are. I know that I've got, a swing site school, so that I've got a bunch of parents that this is their first time ever having to think about their children on buses. So thank you for everything that's been done there on the operational side of buses as well. As Reverend Smith said, thank you to Cat. My son loves his time on the Cat bus every afternoon. The new passes look great. They're actually hard, little credit card shaped, but then it's on his lanyard with his school ID. If you're thinking that Cat could help your child and you're concerned and worried about it, reach out to me. As Dr. Hoskins-Brown said, my information's on the internet. You can find me. Email me. My son will talk to you and tell you that it's safe. The bus drivers are looking out for those kids just as well as our bus drivers look out for their 60 and 70 kids on every single bus. And the students look out for each other. He told me, he came home last week and was like, oh, there was a 6th grader that was worried because the 6th line went past and he was worried. And he's like, I grabbed him and said, it comes back around. You would have actually been on it longer. We just got to cross the street. So there are kids that have done this for a couple of years now, and if we become, if we are change agents, more and more of our children and families will understand that public transportation works and that we can utilize it, and that the district has gone into a contract with another entity that can help us in the areas for our specialty program. So please, if you're concerned, reach out, we can discuss. Would also like to thank the academic side of the house. I know we had some advocates that were worried about some of our autism children that we had to move, but we moved them for good reasons. It's just change is difficult. Some of those same individuals that reach out to me with concerns actually did what most people don't do and reach back out after a week and said, guess what? I'm hearing good things. Okay, I know you never hear thanks. So I did get one of those calls that said, I've talked to parents and they're happy with the services and they're dealing with the change. We never like change. And then I would like to, finish with my thanks on school nutrition. I'm so happy to see us finally in a community eligibility program where no child and no family is concerned about filling out paperwork that may or may not make them look the same as everybody else. Everybody's just in line. My son says the lines are going faster. I was like, yeah, because we don't have to worry. Everybody can just go through. He's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. All of the kids that I've talked to said, I don't know who's running it, but it's better. They're like, so far it's been really good. If you didn't know, board members, next Friday is Low Country Boil with local shrimp, and they're already talking about it. Like, I know there's a buzz. They're like, y'all see that we got Low Country Boil on the 22nd? Like, kids already planning for lunch. So I might have to see if I can make it to a school. And I know I'll have to pay, and I'll have to put it on. Can't pay cash, so I'll have to have it on an account. Yeah, I'll have to open up a My School Buck so I can get a lunch. Yeah, you'll put it on yours, thanks. And then I would like to thank the district staff as a whole for the commitment to transparency. The commitment to excellence in everything, and Dr. Hoskins-Brown's question kind of alluded to this and said, hey, tell us about the problems. And I believe that our district wants to hear those problems. They can't fix things without knowing about them. So if you're worried about telling your boss, then email one of us and say, can you get this to the right people without my name attached to it? We can't correct issues if we don't know they're an issue. And if you've been in the district for a long time and you're like, well, that's how it's always looked, but you don't think it looks right, bring it to our attention, okay? Because if it isn't excellent to you and you wouldn't want it to be that way for your children, we don't want it to be that way for anybody's children. So please bring things, and the board members are going to hit me later because they're going to get emails, but bring it to our attention so that it can be fixed, so that when Dr. Hoskins-Brown and all of us ask what's going wrong, they tell us more, okay? And I truly believe they have been very transparent with all of the schools that are in my district with issues, so that I know before I get that email. And I can say, yes, I've been told by the district, or if something comes to me, I've been getting a super quick turnaround. So we need to know. Community, please reach out to us. So thank you to everybody that made the first week really great for us, jumping in head first on 5 days in a row. That's a big change. But I do believe I've heard from the teachers that they like that extra time as well to prepare. So I think it's worked really well. So again, thank you. I know I talked too long.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, again, thank you for the report, and myself as well out in the community, and I've heard a lot about starting school on Monday. The parents really appreciated the teachers as well. I do have a few questions. One is for Mr. Ray. Given the significant amount of teacher-on loan positions that we had last year that were vacancies, how feasible are those positions and beneficial? Because I know last year a very small amount was filled.
Yeah, I think you were looking, well, last year we had something where we allowed secondary schools to have teacher on loan. Prior to that, we only had teacher on loans at middle school and K-8. Well, we moved back to that this school year. So you won't see as many vacancies at the teacher on loan, but also it just depends on where principals are in the hiring process. We typically want the teacher on loan to be somebody who's new to the system or a new educator, somebody who might not be as comfortable in the classroom per se, but can transition. So it just depends on what the principal is thinking as they're looking at those positions, and then the availability of the pool itself.
Do the schools have the opportunity to request teacher alone, or you just give it to
Well,
all
it's
of
at
them?
every elementary and K-8. Every elementary and K-8 has it. So it's not that we don't want to do it at middle and high, but remember, it has to be in content. It's easier to have an early child with teacher that can go to kindergarten and fifth grade because they're in field, as opposed to high school. If you couldn't have a middle school, a math person necessarily go fill in for a month in science, for example. So it's a little bit easier to do at K-8 and elementary, and that's the reason why we do it there.
Okay. And also, next question is school culture. I know that this is the week 2, and has there been any fights reported? And if so, what we have to really consider is if it happens one time, it impacts the climate. But if it happens all of the time, it becomes a part of the culture. And we really need to hone in on that right now, because we don't want to have a culture whereas there's fighting going on every week. So what are we doing to assist those principals and those schools with school culture regarding the fighting?
I do want to give a context here. We're talking about students, not employees, correct? Because
I'm not asking you, I'm just asking.
I know, but the question came to human resource. I wouldn't want people in the audience to get confused and think about the question coming to me. So
Anybody can just answer.
I just want to clarify. Let schools answer the question.
Yeah, so I don't have a firm number of how many physical altercations that have taken place to date, but what has been reported to my office is that we did have a physical altercation that took place off campus. It wasn't on campus, but after school was dismissed, it took place off campus. What we notice is that we have more students engaged today in comparison to last year, and that is based on the preparation that was done this summer prior to the opening of schools. So what we did was we worked with our school leaders and their instructional leadership teams, and we created explicit guidances and minute-by-minute plans for what students, how students should be entering buildings, dismissing from buildings, changing classes, and working with the staff on how to narrate that to students and provide the necessary consequences to students that doesn't necessarily involve an actual office referral, but is related to reminding students from a positive standpoint of what is expected of them. In doing so, and we have observed this, that we have seen more students engaged and following the actual school expectations. A big part of this, and I went to some of our schools where we did see an increase in student altercations and off-task behaviors in the previous year. I was intentional about observing those schools this year, and what we noticed that teachers are more vigilant as a result of these specific plans that were put in place. So once adult behaviors change, we are more apt to be able to change student behaviors. But the firm number of altercations, I don't know the number to date, but I can find that out.
Okay, and then final question for Chief. I'll make sure I address the right person. The mobile command unit, how mobile is it? Is it always out and about, or is it just parked and used as needed?
So no, we deployed it during back to school. We try to keep it as mobile as we possibly can. We're very limited on the number of drivers. This week, Justin is actually out. He's out of the office, but he's not the only driver. We're training. We're going to have about 7 people that's going to be trained on how to operate it. I'm also a trained operator for the vehicle, so I will be taking that vehicle out myself, and it will be a location that we'll be doing a lot of collaboration and coordination, and not just when something happens, but making that vehicle available for just in a region where we connect to our layered security to be able to monitor and see what's going on. So being as proactive as we can.
Thank you.
And Ms. Hall had something else.
My colleague to my left informed me that the reason the landscaping contracts have been diminished is because the board decided, among myself, a couple of years ago to change those contracts and take some of that money away. So since I'm now asking that we revisit that, Dr. Watts, I'll ask that you please, when it's time for contracts, that we go back and take a good look at it, because we do need to do that.
All right, so I only have one thing to say. We have some people from our transportation department here, and I would like them to stand because we want to show that we really appreciate you. Okay. Our next. Please get to the next one. Our next presentation will be on our charter schools. And I think this is the first time we will be hearing from our new charter school liaison, who I just met for the first time this morning, Ms. Shakira Barnes. And of course, Dr. Stacy Taylor.
So, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Moss has kind of taken a bit of my thunder, but you'll get a double introduction. It's okay. I want to start by introducing Mrs. Shakira Smith-Barnes, our charter school liaison. You may recall that last school year we expanded this role, and one thing that I want to point out is we'll share the presentation space, but much of the work that has happened and will need to happen is a reflection of her efforts, and so I want to highlight that. With that being said, Ms. Barnes. Good morning. And so you'll get to hear from her shortly. Today's presentation is designed to connect the dots between legislative shifts, the work that's already underway, and opportunities for strengthening our charter authorizing practices. Our purpose today is threefold. We'll first walk you through key changes in state legislation, specifically Senate Bill 82. Then we'll take a look at how we're adapting our district standards to meet our district practices, to meet the new state standards. And then finally, we'll talk about how the changes in law create both new opportunities as well as new accountability requirements. But before we get to the good stuff, I think it's important that we understand or ground ourselves in where we are. We currently authorize 5 locally approved charters. Each school operates under a fixed agreement, and they must go through a renewal process with both our board and the State Charter School Commission. So a key lever in our charter work, and this lever allows us to create and sustain strong partnerships with our charter schools, is the work of our charter liaison. And before she comes up, I would like to talk a little bit about her role. And it's really centered on 4 main areas. First, she serves as a translator, making sure that our charter partners clearly understand and are aware of district expectations, policies, and timelines. She's also an interpreter, bringing the successes as well as concerns from our charter schools to our district leadership. And then she also monitors, keeping a very close eye on charter school performance against the established authorizing standards. And finally, she really is involved with creating and building tools and processes that strengthen collaboration as well as transparency with our charter schools. With that being said, I'd like Ms. Barnes to walk you through the work that she's done in 24-25 that highlights the impact of her role.
Thank you again, Ms. Taylor, and thank you for the ongoing support this past year. We've made significant progress this year in the first year of my role, and I think a lot of this has to do with just setting some foundation for clear communication. So this year we've marked a big first in our district. We completed our first authorizing evaluation. We've partnered with the National Association of Charter School Authorizers and the State Charter Schools Commission to see where we stand and where we can grow. This evaluation process should help us in setting the foundation for more consistent, high-quality oversight moving forward. Getting our foundation stronger is just one aspect of the work. We also want to build our district leadership capacity as we strive to establish a more robust understanding of charter authorization. Moving right along to increasing internal capacity, we've been working to provide district teams with updates on charter-specific policies and legislation, as well as shared evaluation takeaways. I'll be meeting with the senior leadership very soon to go over that evaluation, every component, where we are, where we can stand to grow. And with this, we believe that with stronger internal alignment, we can focus on guiding schools through key moments in their life cycle and sustainability. Supporting the charter growth and renewal, we've been working very closely with schools, preparing for renewals, using performance data to guide decisions. To note, Dr. Laura May and I have worked with Oglethorpe Charter this past year to ensure that they have more clarity in the timeline process for obtaining their renewal this past year. And we've also done a really small-scale partnership with OCS with some leadership capacity at their school. We are currently positioning the district to be ready for Senate Bill 82 and Georgia's updated accountability framework. You will hear more about that in today's presentation with Mrs. Taylor. As a part of this presentation, we're also looking at how we evaluate potential opportunities as new charter petition comes up to this current school year. Had an opportunity to sit in on a lunch and learn through the Georgia Charter Schools Association that's trying to get community members to understand how charter schools operate and the significant need for those in the community. New charter petition evaluation rubric. Dr. May and I also created a revised rubric that aligns with state standards and district priorities. The rubric was first used with the REACH charter application that you're aware of already that will be talked about in the formal session today. This rubric was first used with REACH again, and it brings more clarity, consistency, and rigor to the petition review process. To bring these efforts to life, we focus on clear communication as a priority in the process. And speaking of communication, I think we've done well with improving that overall. A considerable amount of time has been spent establishing clear points of contact in district offices and departments so schools know exactly where to go for help. We have also streamlined processes and responded faster to ensure timely, consistent support. We want to continue this because we realize that a better partnership is established when communication is a priority. So these steps go far beyond checking boxes. They represent our commitment to a sustainable, transparent, and collaborative approach to charter authorizing that will keep students at the center of every decision. We're building a framework that not only supports and empowers schools today, but also that will equip us to innovate, adapt, and deliver lasting success for students well into the future. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you for the report. As we've received it so far, I think a lot of this is really exciting. One of the things that I was hoping is with the new charter petition evaluation rubric is maybe we could receive that as board members, because what we get is the application and the recommendation all at the same meeting. And you got, by the way, you got 3 days to read it, So if we could know that rubric and kind of internalize it early on, I think it would really help me looking at the process. Thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
Hi, what Dr. Hoskins-Brown just said is part of my response. Also, the, what did we call it? The uniform set of standards that are coming. Will all of that stuff be public-facing or only for us?
It will actually be public-facing, and as we talk about Senate Bill 82, that's one of the major components is this push around transparency, So not only do we have to detail decisions, but we also have to show our timeline, our criteria. So all of that will be public, and I know Dr. Hoskins Brown stepped out. But I will say around the rubric, the timing is perfect because Ms. Barnes is in the process of renorming the internal team around that, and so that would be a good opportunity to extend or share that with the board as well.
Okay, and hopefully I'm not asking a question that's coming up. I didn't see it, but are these new standards going to apply just to new charter petitions or to existing charters? Are we going to have to update any of the standards that we hold them to potentially, or would they remain the same?
So there are components that will impact our current portfolio, which is the 5 current charters. And we had a conversation about this in our first quarterly meeting. Not so much that it makes them have to change or update anything that they're doing. This evaluation is more so around the district's priority and making sure that our authorizing practices are equitable, that they are updated, they are public facing, that people are knowledgeable about how they work, and that they are to create opportunities not only for the existing schools, but new schools that want to apply moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Hall.
Thank you so much. Good to meet you. And I think this is a big step forward for us. However, I do want to say, and I'll say it to the public, in no way will I hope the board change its idea of what the charter schools should offer to the public school system. And we will be as diligent as we ever were in making sure that the charter school is an enhancement of what we are doing. And if it is not, I will have no problem with saying no, as I've said many times in the past. If it's wonderful, then absolutely come on board. But I do want to get that out there to the public that we are not going to be intimidated in any way because of these new guidelines.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you. As sitting here, I remember being the liaison for private schools, and I was very hands-on, going out to the schools, working with the principals and so forth. What does your job typically entail? Do you have the opportunity to go out to the schools to meet with principals individually? Do you have group meetings? Just tell us a little about your
Yes,
your
ma'am,
position.
thank you. I was actually at every school the past 2 weeks, whether they had an open house. I was with Mr. Lawless on first day. We had an amazing day, and I absolutely love my time driving down to Tybee because the scenery is just so beautiful. Always a joy to be there. But yes, I will be front and center in schools. That is my heart, to be in schools, but also opportunities for them to meet with us virtually, on site, and just through departments, having open office hours with like the finance team, of an array of ways that we can meet their needs and just keep them in the loop of communication and partnership.
Yes, prior to Tybee, it was St. Michael's Private School, and I enjoyed that ride to the beach as well back then.
Anyone else? All right, I am so glad you're here. One thing I'm very excited about is, hang on a second. There was a point where one of the things that you do is you work with the charter schools, and one of the purposes of charter schools is to be incubators for new things that we can adapt to the rest of our district. I'm glad that you are going to be heading that collaboration, because I think there are several things that the charter schools have done that we can bring. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. It's been an amazing year.
Right.
So now we will transition to some highlights of Senate Bill 82. The law requires uniform authorizing standards across the state of Georgia to ensure that charter school petitions are evaluated both fairly as well as consistently. Also, there's a call out around transparency, which calls for the criteria, timelines, as well as performance outcomes to be made available public, as well as all charter decisions must be documented, defensible, and based on evidence. So that's kind of high top or high level Senate Bill 82, but I'd like to take a deeper dive into some of the key provisions. Starting with financial incentives, districts will receive $250,000 a year for 3 years for every newly approved charter. Again, there's also a call out around transparency. That is a major focus of Senate Bill 82. Written rationales must be public for all denials. One thing that I'd like to point out or note about how we're currently operating is our district does currently put both approvals and denials. They're both made public via our board docs. So hearing your point around, we can put some more around what the rubrics are and those types of things, but we do currently make public not just denials, but also approvals. The other piece is around heightened accountability. If 2 charter petitions are denied over a 3-year period, the state later goes back to approve those petitions, Swiss waiver flexibility could be at risk. And we'll dig a little bit deeper in that in a subsequent slide. And then finally, the State Charter School Commission under this law will provide additional support specifically around authorizing guidance as well as best practices and resources that we can use to support authorizing. Thinking about what the immediate implications are for our charter authorizing work, we will need to update internal protocols and documents to align with both the state and national standards. As mentioned earlier, these changes also come with funding opportunities. And finally, though we do have a very strong documentation process, there are also opportunities for us to strengthen our practices around documentation and where we house things to make them public to ensure we're meeting the requirements around heightened transparency. Though we have touched a bit on what happens if a charter petition is denied, I'd like to go back to that to dig just a bit deeper, and I want to call out kind of what the process looks like if a petition is denied under Senate Bill 82. So again, every denial must now include written justification, and if a charter petitioner is denied, they can go to the State Charter School Commission to apply for their charter to be approved. If the State Charter School Commission overturns 2 or more denials within a 3-year period, again, the flexibility around Swiss waivers could potentially be taken away. I'm going to pause for a bit. I've gone through a couple slides, so I'll give you an opportunity.
Yeah. I know most of this discusses the petition and denial of a new charter. I have not, is there anything explicit in State Bill 82 on renewal?
Not specifically.
So
I'll punt to my colleague.
Are there pros, cons to a local authority denying or ending a charter contract when it comes up for its 5-year renewal?
To my knowledge, it doesn't speak directly to that.
I mean, I've looked, but it's huge.
But I'll pun, Mr. Dennison, Attorney Dennison.
No, it doesn't address the renewal process. To my understanding, it's about the initial application.
Initial petition. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Holland and Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Ms. Taylor, if we were to deny and they go to the state, they cannot make any improvements to the application based on reasons that we gave for denying them before they present it to the state in its new form where the state might decide to approve it. It has to be the exact application that we denied that the state sees.
It is my understanding that it's the same application.
Okay.
So it's almost, I didn't want to use the word appeal, but in my mind, that's kind of what I think of it as. We
Okay.
denied it, and they're appealing that
Appeal.
very same application to the state, but I am open for.
Yeah, they didn't provide any clarification on that. I think it's presumed to be the same, and we're told it would be the same, but someone might ask for something different. We don't know what the state may or may not allow, but our understanding is that the way it should work theoretically.
Okay, and,
Okay,
and ethically, that's the way it should work.
I can speak from experience. The application that they send to us is the same application that is sent to the state. In fact, those applications are sent at the same time. So that when they apply to us, a copy of that goes to the state, and then, of course, they can, then, if they're denied, they can, so it's, the state is seeing the same thing, yeah. Okay, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
All right. Thank you. This is really helpful, and I guess I'm looking at this. I think there's probably an anticipation that local boards are going to have some sort of visceral response to this potential denial. But I also have a money question, so I'm teeing you up, Larry, because I'm going to ask you a budget question about minimum budget for the smallest budget for a charter school, like in terms of our range of what we give them on an annual basis. Which ones, you don't have to give the name, but what's the lowest amount and maybe the highest amount? But my comment about this is that, this threat of denying our waivers and this stick to scare you to approve charters doesn't really bother me, because it's kind of like if you don't have bad intent going into the review process for a charter, it doesn't really matter. Either it's a good application or it's not. And if it's not a good application, then somebody else more experienced in reviewing the development of a school structure than me, this is my part-time job. But there's people up in the Capitol where it's their full-time job to look at whether or not a school can be developed. They will review it, and they will see the same weaknesses. So I think that, that there are politics in play that try to make boards feel like those boards that are perceived as anti-charter boards, make them feel like, well, if you don't do it, then we're going to do this thing. But I don't bring that spirit into the review process, and so I don't really fear these repercussions. The financial incentive of $250,000 per year for 3 years didn't, to me, really resonate as something really significant, because I think we spend a whole lot more than that, and so that's why I wanted to tee up our financial leadership. Like, what are we spending a year?
So while he's he had his final, he has a couple more minutes on his tee-up before he shares out. The one thing I'll add to that comment is this piece around, we will now all be looking through the same lens. So the local authorizers will be looking through the same lens as the state, and that is the piece around standardizing the criteria. So I just want to point that out to align with that comment.
And I think one thing that's important when you talk about what we are spending, so, there's the funding that they're getting because they have students and they entitled to that funding, and then sort of the what are we are spending piece comes into that administrative fee piece, which we have arrangements with the schools as to what administrative fee can be and what services are involved in that fee, and what we, either a percentage or a flat fee right now that we can take on the basis of that. So I think that to kind of do apples to apples, it's helpful to think about the $250,000 in connection to what our annual administrative fees are that we are taking for the other charters, to give you a sense of the funding that can go to, the service that we're able to retain.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denson. So I'm going to tell you what I heard, and you can tell me if I'm on the right track. So it sounds to me that $250,000 is very similar to what a dentist once described to me as the coverage for dental insurance now. So I had a dentist that said, you know what, dental insurance no longer covers 100% of what your activity is going to be. Consider dental insurance a coupon not full coverage for what you're going to have happen. And so what I heard and what you said is the $250,000 is meant to be a coupon towards some level of expenses that would be incurred. You said fee. I was thinking maybe an offset of the staffing costs, because that looked like close to what some of the staffing costs may be.
I would say there's probably an appreciation that the real costs to districts are much higher than the administrative fee that can be isolated for each charter and that can be itemized, that's a challenging piece. And so probably with a recognition that the real cost to the district is much higher than the administrative fee we're able to receive, we're going to put this additional funding out there to, like you said, carrot and incentivize and say it's a good thing to take on charters. And I know you may think you're not above water with the administrative fee, but here is $250,000 for the next 3 years to assist with that process.
Thank you.
Okay. Hatchbar and then Ms. Campbell.
I think Larry's about to answer.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
When we look at one of the smaller charters, their total budget is just around about $3.5 million. Probably our largest is Oglethorpe, and theirs is a little over $7 million.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ma'am.
So just for clarity, was there any guidance in the law or in anything from the state about the administrative fee and the $250,000? Is it vague about whether it's meant to be a replacement, or is it a $250,000 standalone bonus payment and it's not intended to cover the administrative fee?
My interpretation of what they've presented to us in the legislation would be that this is separate from the administrative fee and also separate from the itemization proof process, but they could come up with their own guidance as to appropriate use for this fee. And we also aren't totally sure if the fee will be allocated. This is dependent on the funds being allocated, so it's a law that allows for it, but ultimately it actually has to actually occur from a funding standpoint.
So what's going to happen is the law goes into effect. Whether the carrot gets funded is a separate issue. We still have to comply.
That's my understanding.
That's awesome. Okay, and then I'm like Dr. Hoskins Brown. I welcome this, and I'm glad to see it. For years, we've been advocating for standardization of the criteria to be applied, a more open and transparent and standardization of charter contract terms, so there isn't a dispute. I thought you meant this when you had this formula. I thought this term meant that. I want a 50,000-page terms and conditions addendum to each charter contract that everybody agrees to on the front end. And this process pushes us towards that goal. So everyone's on the same page, both us, the charters, and the state, and there's more clarity on the front end. And I think that leads to better relationships because we're not constantly arguing about what terms mean during the relationship. The state, and this has happened to us as a district in the past, the state gets different information on the subsequent appeal and says, well, what about this and what about that? And we're like, they didn't present that to us. And then the state says to us, well, you should have thought about or talked about that anyway, which is kind of a circular argument. So I welcome this. It sets statewide rules. I look forward to proactively, setting terms and criteria on the front end and getting input from the charters as well.
Ms. Campbell?
Questions are answered. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you. I really do believe that SB 82 will encourage more individuals to want to actually, open charter schools. But I just need for them to keep in mind that it has to be differentiated. A very successful differentiation. We currently doing something different from that of our public schools, as well as not duplicating what our 5 current charter schools are implementing. So we welcome them. I welcome Senate Bill 82, but they just need to keep in mind that it has to be key differentiation, no duplications of what we're already currently providing for our students.
Dr. Brinkman.
Yeah, I want some clarification on that because the way I read it and look at the new charter law, it does not. That's one of our internal policies that we wanted it to be differentiated, but this bill allows any charter to duplicate what we're doing in the district and have a charter school. So we will no longer be able to use our policy where we wanted charter schools to differentiate to then bring something back to us to be one of the reasons that we used to use to deny. We used to say, well, we're already doing this in the district, so why would you just want to duplicate something we're doing? We no longer need to use that as board members in that's how I'm reading. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong in the review process. I think our review process will be actually much more simple. Do they have a board? Do they have the finances? Do they have the space? Are they, having students that are going to come from some area? Is there a demand or a need? Or I don't even know if they really have to show that much of that. So it's really down to a lot of objective board funding, an actual physical space for them to meet. And I don't know how many other things will actually be, as a board member, local authority looking at, where we used to actually want to see differentiation. The way the state, and this reads to me, is we cannot deny for that reason.
Focus is more on quality, and so.
Yes, just quality, not what they're delivering.
I think a key thing to think about here is that we, as the board, the district, the board will have the ability to have its own standard, but if its own standard results in a different result than the state, and the state approves, the fact that we applied a different standard doesn't protect us to say that now they're not going to look at it and say that was a good faith denial because you used your standard. If that charter is approved by the state standards, and that's why, in terms of the way the current setup is as a Swiss school, aligning our standards with the state standard does make a lot of sense, but it does not mean that we could not have our own standards, but we have to look at that from a policy standpoint because that is where you go when you choose to have your own standard. You can't expect the state to apply its own standard when you're going to be assessed by up or down from the state.
Well, I just like to, right now we have over 999 churches, and the way this is going, we probably have as many schools as churches if there's no particular standard. So I just like to continue to get more clarity on this.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I think that what Dr. Brinkman says and what Dr. Howard Hall just said make a good point. A lot of the really energetic discussions we've had about charters where we weren't supportive of the charter was us really disagreeing with the pedagogy. Are you going to be able to get there from here with the young people you say you're going to work with? And so we've turned folks down in the past because it's like, oh, we don't think you're going to, our children are not an experiment. We don't think you're going to be able to do this. And so we're not going to empower you to try. What Dr. Brinkman says about this legislation does make sense. We're not really evaluating it in that way. And so more folks are going to get a chance to run their experiment. And the evaluation is not going to be based on whether the local district believes their pedagogy is going to work for the demographic of the broader district. It's going to be 3 years out, did you meet the outcomes from your contract? And if your littles or your bigs didn't make these scores, then now the district will undo. We'll have to undo a school that was built versus being stewards for the funding to establish a school. Now, what that means, Dion's going to always talk about money. So what that means is we're going to have to find the money for all of these schools that are going to be created. And where is that money going to come from? That's going to be a bigger part of our budget process that we've ever had before, because all of these yeses mean additional schools, and that we'll have to fund. And I'm okay with that. My philosophy on our spending is for the community, tell us what you want, and and the staff will tell us what it costs, and we will build it and make it happen. But there's also a price tag to a more inclusive strategy around these approvals.
Okay. I want to clarify something about the money. So what Mr. Jackson just quoted, yes, it's $3 million. That's not $3 million from us. That is
Generated.
through the
charter
generated
schools
by
enrollment.
FTE,
Right.
by the number of students they have.
Yeah.
Also, charter schools do not have, well, up until now, charter schools also weren't able to participate in East Plus, so there's no facility money in that. So what they have to do with that FTE is they have to fund their staff and their facility. So, and that's not coming from us. So I just want to clear that up. I don't want the public thinking that charter schools are, you know, that we are funding charter schools. Yes, there are some services that we supply, but yeah.
And it's not a zero, it's not a net zero enterprise, is what I'm saying. It's not that we don't have any level of investment in charter schools.
If I can just chime in right quick, of all of the charter schools' budgets, and I do have a couple of leaders here, of their total budgets, we may fund locally anywhere between 55 and 60% of their total budget. They do get funded from QBE, but we fund majority percentage of their budgets from local tax dollars.
And one more clarification on state charters. Schools, the criteria to become a state charter is actually harder than a local charter because state charters have to act as their own LEA. They get nothing local. So they can't have HR, insurance, they have to fund, and state charters are also held to higher standards. On the state level, the state will close you down in a year. They don't wait for 3 years.
But we're likely not to, understanding what you said,
Yeah.
but we're not likely going to have a lot of state charters because we're a pretty inclusive board.
Right,
And
but-
we're more at neutral and yes than we are no. So they're not likely to become state charters.
Right,
They're
right.
more likely to fit the model of the charters that we are currently
Right.
supporting
Right.
in the
I
myriad
I
ways
just
that
wanted
we
that
do.
so the public don't think that, you know, all of these states.
That it's easier?
That it's easier to become a state charter. because-
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Yes, back to you.
No, great conversations. I'm excited about it. So with that being said, we did participate in the National Association of Charter School Authorizers and Evaluation, and I want to give Ms. Barnes an opportunity, and it'll help kind of us as we explore and unpack the Senate bill, talk about where we are with authorizing and where we need to go to be sure that we are aligned with SB 82. Ms. Barnes?
So I received an email a few months ago and said, you're going to be participating in this, the district will. And so my first question was, is this required? How did this come about? And the Charter Commission partnered with this organization, the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, to create, before us, the evaluation system to just help with the authorization process. So I don't want that to be confused with anything in SB 82. Those are two different entities, of course. But the evaluation process includes document and policy review to ensure legal compliance and clarity, which I think we're making progress in that area as well. Stakeholder interviews at some point with district leaders, staff, board members to assess transparency, fairness, and consistency. Now that we've done the evaluation, and basically what it looked like, they send us a rubric of all the documents and things such as our website to upload all of those things so they could review it. It took them about 3 weeks to review it, and then we did a debrief session, which took about 1 hour, and they just kind of surface level talked about, this is where you are. Do you have anything you want to resubmit? in this process, and at the end of this month, they will have the finalized version, which of course will be shared with you. And that performance analysis of how districts monitor any academic, financial, and operational outcomes for charter schools, to include if the school is not doing well academically, like how are we supporting them? What things are we putting in place to ensure they have sustainability moving forward? So why does this matter? It strengthens the district capacity to make fair, consistent, and well-informed decisions about renewals, closures, new school petitions. Promotes transparency, we've used that word quite a bit today, and trust between the districts, the schools, and the community, and it encourages alignment with state and national best practices. So reducing the risk and improving outcomes, once again, for all students. So the work is important because it moves charter oversight from a compliance exercise to a more student-centered, performance-driven partnership, as we've said we wanted to have with our schools.
All right, as we begin to bring our presentation to a close, I'd like to take a moment to share with you our next steps. And the first next step, and I'm hearing the conversation emerge, is we'll begin with the board defining its vision for chartering. From there, we will connect with our current charter partners so that they're aware of the district's vision around charter. And then we'll also train, and I talked a little bit about it earlier, but we'll also train and kind of reset our staff so that they're also knee-deep and really understand the way in which charters operate and the way in which they're being authorized, which will help position them better to support our charters. And then we also, as I've mentioned before, we do need to update our documents to be sure that they are aligned with SB 82 so that we have consistency in our practices as well as what's written. And really how I want to end this conversation is for our team, ultimately our goal is this. We want to strike a balance between rigor, transparency, and collaboration. And if we do that, I think that'll position us to authorize charters that benefit students. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we're working to do. So I think we've answered quite a few questions throughout, but we're happy to pause here if you have any additional questions or feedback.
Dr. Brinkman, and yeah.
Yeah, and I do not need this answer now, and I know that on page 3, this data is old for enrollment, but now that we have you with us, Barnes, that's great. If whenever we are told enrollment numbers for our charters, because they have a contract that states an upward enrollment, I would love for us to have like as recent of an enrollment number that they've provided or that we can get from wherever that comes from, what their most recent contract says their enrollment can go up to, and then also if that school has a wait list and how many students are on that wait list. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hall, and then Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Ms. Taylor, do you feel it would behoove us to receive more training as a board in any way as we go into these next steps? Because I certainly want all of us to be on the cutting edge in terms of our understanding of what we're doing, because this is very serious business.
So I'll say this, I think a shared understanding is great, and I'll pun to the superintendent if she wants to speak more about her vision around training with and for the board, but I certainly am supportive of developing a shared understanding because the board really, as I noted, drives the vision for what happens around charters.
Yes, I am in alignment with Ms. Taylor around shared understanding. I think that shared understanding should also extend to our staff and the charter schools. So shared to me is more comprehensive than just the board, since we're kind of moving into new territory. In addition to that shared understanding or training that you have highlighted, really the most important step for me is that we recast and reimagine the partnership and the vision and the way we work moving forward. We have to codify those things and be real clear about not only the entry criteria, but what substantiates the opportunity maybe for a charter not to exist once it comes on board. So gaining that clarity now is extremely important, and it could involve additional training.
Okay.
not only for the board, but for others.
Hoskins Brown and then Dr. Hicks.
Thank you. Yes, that was just, I was following up on my email about getting training. Each year, we talk about having whole board training on things that are really, really important. And I think just given the amount of conversation we've had on this presentation, that having a training would make future charter application reviews much more effective, efficient, productive, succinct, well-informed. So I really hope that there will be a training that, whether it's inclusive of the whole staff, that happens at like a retreat, or whether it's something else that gets us well-grounded and has what's been called a shared understanding. Thank you.
And I would love it if we would be the district that does it first. So Kurt, talk to Georgia Charter School, the School Board Association, and tell them that we're going to come up with one, and we want full credit.
I mean, amen,
Dr.
amen,
Brennan.
and amen. We're always wanting to be trained, and we need to get credit. And unfortunately, a lot of times we get the same training over and over again because that's all we can get credit for. So it would be lovely if, whatever that process is, we could find training for charter schools, because they all have boards too that have the exact same requirements of having to get credit, and we can all be in the same room together and actually meet each other, which would serve some good purposes, but then we could all actually get training that would be beneficial and count towards those, which would, we could solve a lot of headaches.
Yeah, excellent topic. In fact, a few years ago, we did organize a charter authorizers training at a board retreat, and we had, I think it was some state level folks come down and supported that as well. We'll certainly look at it. I think just general thought in my mind is the state has those approved authorizers that you can get credit for. I'm pretty sure charter is in there somewhere, so we'll get to work on that.
Okay. Mr. Kachmar.
Two quick comments. On the data that Dr. Bringman asked you to gather and maintain and circulate, please also add transfers from charters back to the district, both after the 10-day count in the fall and then also January after the beginning of the second half of the school year. I think we need to track that data as well as part of overall enrollment and FTE calculation. And then second, I was going to make the same comment Dr. Bringman made about, well, one, let's get credit for training. And then two, once we've developed this new process with the state's guidance and then our internal criteria, I would love a meeting and an opportunity to have that training with staff, the school board, and charter staff and school boards, because what you see on paper is a 3-sentence, the district believes blah, 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 blah. But when we can sit there and talk about the intent behind that point, and current board members who passed that policy, and staff who drafted that policy because we're trying to address a particular issue, we can expand and flesh out that issue and discuss with the charters in particular, is this micromanaging? Is this useful to you? Here's why it's useful to us. It'll help us develop better policy and build better relationships too. So at least having one session, everybody in the same room, nobody can then say after, nobody told me and I didn't know. On all sides.
Dr. Howard Hall.
And just to add, if we can include our state senators, if they could come also to well, they voted on it. Senate, yeah, Senate bill, we can ask them to come and share their perspectives of it as well.
So I will say this, I thought that was my final word, but I think I have one other thing I want to add to the conversation, and I just want to publicly acknowledge Mrs. Barnes for her work. She was new to the role, it shifted, and Dr. Hoskins Brown asked the million-dollar question, what about the pain points? And we have had some pain points in the spirit of transparency, but what I want to share is that she has risen to the occasion. She is a charter leader, she's been a charter leader, so she has extensive experience, but she has really zoomed up in the district role to be able to support charter leaders, and I just want to thank you and acknowledge your work.
Okay, I will now entertain a motion. Stop it. A motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate, personnel. Thank you. All legal. All in favor? All right, let's see.